The temperature had dropped 12 degrees in the last hour. Marin Collier stood outside the restaurant at 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve, her phone dead, her coat too thin, and her ride nowhere in sight. The dinner shift had run 3 hours late because someone had called in sick and someone else had walked out mid-service, and now she was stuck on a sidewalk in Crestmore watching her breath turn white in the air. She checked her phone again. Still dead. She'd meant to charge it during her break, but there hadn't been a break. The restaurant, Bellamy's, a place she couldn't afford to eat at but could afford to work at, had closed 20 minutes ago. The last of the kitchen staff had already driven off. The street was empty except for a row of parked cars and the distant sound of Christmas music bleeding out of a bar 2 blocks down. Her apartment was 40 minutes away, by bus. The buses had stopped running an hour ago. She started walking toward the main road, arms crossed tight against her chest. Her feet hurt. Her lower back ached from 8 hours of carrying plates. She had $47 in her checking account and $6 in tips in her pocket because most people don't tip well on Christmas Eve. They're too busy thinking about their own families to notice the person refilling their water. A black car sat idling at the corner. She slowed. It looked like the car her roommate's boyfriend drove when he occasionally picked her up. Same model, same color, same tinted windows. She'd texted him earlier asking for a ride, back when her phone still had battery. Maybe he'd actually come. She walked closer. The rear passenger window was down an inch. She couldn't see inside. "Derek?" she said. No answer. She should have walked away. Later, she would think about this moment constantly, how easy it would have been to just keep walking, to find a gas station and ask to use their phone, to do anything other than what she did next. But she was cold and tired, and it was Christmas Eve, and she just wanted to go home. She opened the back door and slid inside. The car was warm. That was the first thing she noticed. The second thing she noticed was that the man sitting in the back seat across from her was not Derek. He was looking at his phone, his face lit by the screen's glow. Dark hair, sharp jaw, expensive coat. He looked up when she got in, and for a moment, neither of them moved. "I'm sorry," Marin said, already reaching for the door handle. "Wrong car. I thought you were—" She heard the locks click. Her hand found the handle and pulled. "Nothing. I thought you were someone else," she said again, her voice steadier than she felt. "Can you unlock the door?" The man put his phone away. He didn't say anything. He just looked at her. Not threatening exactly, but not reassuring either, like he was solving a problem in his head. "Please unlock the door," Marin said. "In a moment." His voice was low, unhurried. "Who did you think I was?" "My roommate's boyfriend. He drives a car like this. A lot of people drive cars like this. I know that now." She tried the door again, still locked. Her heart was beating faster, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic wouldn't help. Panic never helped. "My name is Marin," she said. "I'm a server at Bellamy's. I just finished my shift. My phone is dead and I thought you were my ride. That's it. That's the whole story. Now can you please let me out?" He studied her for another long moment. Then he leaned forward and said something to the driver that she couldn't hear. The car began to move. "What are you doing?" She grabbed the door handle with both hands. "Stop the car. Let me out." "I'm taking you somewhere warm," he said. "You're shaking." "I don't know you." "No, you don't. This is kidnapping. You got into my car voluntarily. I made a mistake. Most people do." The car turned onto the main road. Marin looked out the window, trying to memorize the route, trying to figure out what to do. She could scream. She could try to break the window. She could— "I'm not going to hurt you," the man said. "I know that doesn't mean anything coming from someone who just locked you in a car. But it's true." "Then let me out. There's a gas station in 4 minutes. I'll let you out there. It's well lit, there are people inside, and you can call whoever you need to call." He paused. unless you'd rather walk back to where I found you and freeze." Marin said nothing. The car was silent except for the soft hum of the heater. She watched the streets pass by. Closed shops, dark houses, a few Christmas lights still blinking in windows. Normal things. Safe things. "Who are you?" she asked. "Does it matter? You just locked a stranger in your car on Christmas Eve, so yes, I think it matters." He almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. "My name is Jonah Vance." The name meant nothing to her. "I own some buildings," he said. "I was on my way home from a meeting that ran late, and then you got into my car." I said I was sorry about that. "You did? So why didn't you just let me out immediately?" He didn't answer right away. The car made another turn. Up ahead, Marin could see the glow of a gas station sign. "Because you looked like you were about to collapse," he said finally. "And it's Christmas Eve, and I wanted to make sure you were all right. By kidnapping me. By giving you a ride to somewhere with heat and a phone." The car pulled into the gas station parking lot and stopped. Marin heard the locks click again, unlocking this time. "There," Jonah Vance said. "You're free." She should have gotten out immediately. She should have run inside and called the police and reported the man who had locked her in his car for 6 minutes and then driven her somewhere safe. Instead, she sat there. "Why do you care?" she asked. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe I don't. Maybe I just didn't want to spend Christmas Eve wondering if the woman who accidentally got into my car froze to death walking home. That's not your problem. No, it's not." She looked at him properly for the first time. He wasn't what she'd expected. Most men who did unexpected things in cars late at night looked a certain way. Aggressive, hungry, predatory. This man looked tired and careful and like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. "Thank you for the ride," she said. It felt strange to say, given the circumstances, but it also felt true. "You're welcome." She opened the door. Cold air rushed in. She started to get out, then stopped. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Vance." "Merry Christmas, Marin." She walked into the gas station. When she looked back through the window, the black car was already gone. The gas station attendant let her use the phone behind the counter. Derek didn't answer. Her roommate didn't answer. Her mother, 3 states away, didn't answer, which was probably for the best, because Marin didn't want to explain why she was calling from a gas station at midnight on Christmas Eve. "You need a cab?" the attendant asked. His name tag said, Rudy. He was somewhere between 50 and 70, with the face of someone who'd seen too much and stopped being surprised by any of it. "I can't afford a cab." Rudy nodded like this was a reasonable statement. "Bus starts running again at 6. 6 hours. 6 hours in a gas station on Christmas Eve." "There's coffee," Rudy said. "Not good coffee, but it's hot. And I won't kick you out if you sit in the corner and don't bother nobody." "Thank you." She got a cup of coffee. He was right, it wasn't good, and found a seat by the window. The plastic chair was uncomfortable. The fluorescent lights hummed. A Christmas song played on the radio, something about chestnuts and open fires. Marin wrapped her hands around the coffee cup and tried not to think about where she was supposed to be right now. She was supposed to be home, in bed, maybe watching a movie with her roommate before they both fell asleep. She was supposed to wake up tomorrow and call her mother and pretend everything was fine. She was supposed to be somewhere other than here. The door opened. Cold air again. She looked up and saw Jonah Vance walk in. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then he walked to the counter, said something to Rudy, and bought 2 cups of coffee. He carried them over to where she was sitting and set one down in front of her. "Yours looked like it was getting cold," he said. "Are you following me?" "No, I live 3 miles from here. I drove past on my way home and saw you through the window." He sat down across from her. "Why are you still here?" "The buses don't run until 6. Call someone. I tried. No one answered. Try again. My phone is dead. Use mine. He held it out to her. She didn't take it. Why do you care? You already did your good deed. You can go home now. I could. He didn't move. But I'm not going to leave you in a gas station for 6 hours on Christmas Eve. You don't know me. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Most true things don't need to be repeated. He set his phone on the table between them. Call someone. Anyone. If they can come get you, I'll leave. She stared at him. He stared back. She picked up the phone and dialed Derek's number again. It went to voicemail. She tried her roommate. Voicemail. She tried 2 other friends who lived nearby. One didn't answer, one was visiting family in another state. There's no one, she said, handing the phone back. Everyone is either asleep or gone or doesn't want to be bothered on Christmas Eve. Jonah Vance was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I have a guest room. No. It has a lock on the inside. You can barricade the door if you want. I'll stay on a completely different floor of the house. I'm not going home with a stranger. Then what are you going to do? Sit here until 6. In a gas station. Yes. On Christmas. Yes. He leaned back in his chair. That's the most stubborn thing I've ever heard. I've survived worse. Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of something that might have been recognition, or respect, or both. I'm sure you have. They sat in silence. Rudy looked at them from behind the counter with the expression of a man who had seen many strange things and didn't get paid enough to have opinions about any of them. Fine, Jonah Vance said finally. Then I'll wait with you. What? If you're going to sit in a gas station until 6 a.m., then so am I. That's insane. Probably. You don't even know me. You keep saying that too. Because it's true. And yet, here we are. Marin opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She didn't know what to say. She'd never met anyone like this before, someone who made decisions that didn't make sense and then stuck to them anyway. Why? She asked. Why what? Why are you doing this? And don't say you don't know. That's not an answer. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, My mother died on Christmas Eve, 11 years ago. She was driving home from a late shift and her car broke down on the side of the road. It was cold, and she didn't have a phone, and she started walking. They found her the next morning. Marin felt something twist in her chest. I'm sorry, she said. I'm not telling you that to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because you asked why, and that's the answer. I don't leave people stranded on Christmas Eve. I can't. The gas station hummed around them. Christmas music played. Rudy restocked a shelf of chips and pretended not to listen. Okay, Marin said quietly. Okay, what? Okay, you can wait with me. But you're not giving me your jacket, you're not buying me food, and when the bus comes, I'm getting on it alone. Fair enough. They sat in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly. It was more like the kind of silence that happens when 2 people have nothing left to prove. Bellamy's, Jonah said eventually. That's a nice restaurant. It is, but the hours are terrible. Most restaurant hours are. Why do you work there? Marin shrugged. It's close to my apartment. The tips are decent. The manager isn't a creep. She took a sip of her coffee, the one he'd brought, which was marginally better than the first one. Why do you own buildings? I inherited some, bought more. Must be nice. Some of it. What's the not nice part? He looked at her like he was deciding how much to say. The not nice part is that everyone wants something from you. And after a while you stop being able to tell who actually likes you and who just likes what you can give them. That sounds lonely. It is. The admission surprised her. Men like him, Whatever kind of man he was, didn't usually admit to loneliness. They built walls and hired staff and pretended everything was fine. "I know what it's like," she said. "Not the money part, obviously, but the not knowing who to trust. After my dad left, my mom's boyfriend moved in. He was nice to everyone. Charming. Good at saying the right things." She paused. Turned out he was stealing her savings the whole time. By the time she figured it out, he was gone, and so was her money. "Is that why you don't trust people?" "I trust people. I just don't trust them automatically. That's wise. It's exhausting." He smiled a little at that. It changed his face, made him look younger, less guarded. "Can I ask you something?" Marin said. "Yes." "Why did you lock the doors? In the car, I mean. When I first got in." He didn't answer right away. "Because I wasn't sure who you were. People don't usually get into my car by accident, and when they do get in deliberately, it's usually not for good reasons." "What kind of reasons?" "Journalists, competitors. Once, someone who wanted to sue me." He shrugged. "I've learned to be careful." "So you just lock everyone in?" "No, usually my driver handles it, but he was distracted tonight. His daughter is in the hospital." "Nothing serious, but he's worried. So he wasn't paying attention when you opened the door, and by the time he noticed, you were already inside." "And you decided to see what I wanted." "I decided to see who you were." "And what did you see?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Someone who made an honest mistake. Someone who was too tired to be dangerous and too stubborn to accept help." "I'm accepting help now." "No, you're allowing me to sit in the same gas station as you. That's different." She laughed. It surprised her. She hadn't expected to laugh tonight. "Okay, fair point." The hours passed slowly. They talked, not constantly, but enough to fill the silence when it felt too heavy. He told her about his work, which she didn't entirely understand, something about commercial real estate and development. She told him about school, which she'd dropped out of 3 years ago when she ran out of money, and about her plan to go back eventually, which felt less like a plan every year and more like a wish. Around 3 a.m., Rudy went on break and left them alone in the store. Around 4 a.m., Marin's head started to droop against the window. Around 5 a.m., she woke up with Jonah's coat over her shoulders and him reading something on his phone across from her. "I told you not to give me your jacket," she mumbled. "It's a coat, technically. And you were shivering." Technicality. Technically correct is the best kind of correct. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. The gas station looked the same, unchanged, eternal, smelling faintly of old hot dogs and floor cleaner. Outside, the sky was starting to lighten around the edges. "Almost 6, Jonah said. "Bus should be here soon." Yeah, neither of them moved. "Thank you," she said. "For staying. You didn't have to." "I know. Most people wouldn't have. I know that too." She started to take off his coat, but he held up a hand. "Keep it until you get home." "You can—" He stopped. "Actually, you can just keep it. I can't keep your coat. It's an old coat. It's a $3,000 coat." He looked mildly surprised. "You can tell how much a coat costs?" "I work at Bellamy's. I see a lot of expensive coats." "Then you know I can afford to lose one." She didn't argue. It was too early, and she was too tired, and the coat was very, very warm. A bus appeared at the end of the street. Murren watched it approach, feeling something strange in her chest, something that felt almost like disappointment. "This is probably the weirdest Christmas I've ever had," she said. "Same." "You stay up all night with women in gas stations often?" "First time." The bus pulled into the lot and opened its doors. Marin stood up. Jonah stood up too. "Well," she said. "Goodbye, Mr. Vance." "Jonah." "Jonah." She held out her hand. "Thank you. For everything. Even the kidnapping part." He shook her hand. His grip was firm and warm and brief. "Take care of yourself, Marin." She walked to the bus and got on. She found a seat by the window and looked out as the bus pulled away. Jonah Vance was still standing in the gas station parking lot, watching her go. She watched him until the bus turned a corner and he disappeared from view. 3 days later, Marin was back at work. Christmas had come and gone. She'd spent the day sleeping, mostly, and then eating leftover pasta and watching bad movies with her roommate Delia, who had finally returned her calls on the 26th with a string of apologetic texts about her phone dying and Derek being useless, and she was so sorry. Marin hadn't told her about Jonah Vance. She wasn't sure how to explain it. She wasn't sure she understood it herself. The coat hung in her closet. She'd looked up the brand. It was more like $4,000, actually, and felt guilty about keeping it. But she didn't know how to return it. She didn't have his number or his address or any way to contact him. She could have Googled him, probably. She'd thought about it. But something stopped her. It felt like cheating somehow, like reading the end of a book before you got there. So she went back to work and tried not to think about it. Bellamy's was busy after Christmas, full of people spending gift cards and celebrating with family they actually wanted to see. Marin worked the lunch shift and the dinner shift and tried to remember why she'd wanted this job in the first place. Around 8 p.m., a party of 6 came in. Expensive suits, expensive watches, the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Marin was assigned their table. "Good evening," she said, handing out menus. "Can I start you with something to drink?" One of them, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes, looked at her in a way she didn't like. "We'll have a bottle of the 98 Burgundy," he said. "And whatever my friend here is having." He gestured to the man beside him. The man beside him was Jonah Vance. Marin felt the menu slip in her hands. She caught it before it fell, but barely. Jonah was looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. Surprised, maybe, or something else. "Water is fine," Jonah said. His voice was even, controlled. "Thank you." "Of course." Marin turned and walked to the bar on legs that didn't feel entirely solid. She put in the wine order and poured a glass of water and tried to think. He was here. In her restaurant. 3 days after their night in the gas station. Was it a coincidence? It had to be a coincidence. The city was big, but it wasn't that big, and Bellamy's was a nice restaurant, the kind of place men like him probably ate at regularly. She brought the water to the table, set it down in front of Jonah without looking at him. "Interesting place," the silver-haired man said. "How long have you worked here?" "About 2 years, Marin said. "You like it?" "It pays the bills." He smiled again. "I'm sure it does." Something about the way he said it made her skin crawl. She took their orders, steaks mostly, and a salad for someone who claimed to be watching their weight, and retreated to the kitchen. "You okay?" asked Luis, one of the line cooks. "You look like you saw a ghost." "I'm fine. Just tired." She wasn't fine. She was the opposite of fine. She was standing in the kitchen of her workplace with her heart pounding and her hands shaking because a man she'd spent one strange night with had just shown up at her table with a group of people who looked like they owned the city. She delivered their food, she refilled their water, she did her job, the way she always did, and tried not to look at Jonah any more than necessary. But she noticed things. She noticed that he barely spoke during the dinner. She noticed that the silver-haired man did most of the talking and that the others deferred to him in ways that suggested he was important. She noticed that Jonah's jaw was tight every time the man spoke and that he'd barely touched his food. Around 9:30, the silver-haired man flagged her. "Down." "We'll take the check," he said. "And what's your name?" "Marin." "Marin." He said it slowly, like he was tasting it. "Pretty name." Pretty girl. He leaned closer. What time do you get off work? She felt Jonah stiffen across the table. Late, she said. Very late. That's a shame. I'm only in town for a few more hours. I would have loved to continue this conversation. I don't think there's much of a conversation to continue. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger exactly, more like interest, like she'd just become more fun to play with. Confident, he said. I like that. Raymond. Jonah's voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise of the restaurant like a blade. Leave her alone. The silver-haired man, Raymond, turned to look at him. I'm just being friendly. You're being inappropriate. Since when do you care about the waitstaff? Jonah didn't answer. He just looked at Raymond with an expression that made the other man's smile fade. Fine, Raymond said, leaning back. No harm meant. Marin brought the check. Raymond paid, cash, an enormous tip that felt less like generosity and more like a power move. The group stood up to leave. Jonah was the last to go. He stopped next to Marin on his way out. I'm sorry about him, he said, low enough that only she could hear. It's not your fault. I know, but I'm still sorry. He paused. Are you all right? I've dealt with worse. I'm sure you have. He looked at her for a moment longer, then nodded. Take care, Marin. He walked out. She watched him go, just like she had from the bus 3 days ago. A week later, she got a call from the restaurant manager. We need to talk, he said. Can you come in early tomorrow? She came in early. She sat in his office and listened while he explained that there had been a complaint. A customer had accused her of being rude, of making inappropriate comments, of creating an uncomfortable dining experience. What customer? Marin asked. What comments? I can't tell you that. I didn't say anything inappropriate to anyone. That's not what the complaint says. Then the complaint is wrong. The manager, a man named Patterson who had been decent to her for 2 years, looked uncomfortable. Look, Marin, I believe you. But this customer is influential. He's a regular at some of our other locations. He threatened to pull his business if we didn't take action. What kind of action? I have to let you go. The words landed like a punch. She sat there, numb, trying to process them. You're firing me because someone lied. I'm letting you go because I don't have a choice. He's threatening to, look, it doesn't matter. My hands are tied. It matters to me. I know, and I'm sorry. I'll give you a good reference, severance pay, whatever you need, but you can't work here anymore. She thought about arguing. She thought about demanding to know who had filed the complaint, what specifically she'd been accused of, whether there was any evidence beyond one man's word. But she already knew. She knew exactly who had done this and why. Raymond. She'd embarrassed him in front of his associates. She'd turned him down. And now he was making her pay for it. Fine, she said. Her voice sounded strange, far away. I'll clean out my locker. She cleaned out her locker. She walked out of the restaurant she'd worked at for 2 years. She went home and sat on her bed and stared at the wall and tried to figure out what she was going to do. She had $312 in her bank account. Rent was due in 2 weeks. She didn't have another job lined up. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Marin? A woman's voice, professional and cool. Please hold for Mr. Vance. Click. Hold music. Then, Marin? Jonah's voice. Something loosened in her chest, just a little. How did you get this number? She asked. It's not hard to find things if you know where to look. I heard what happened. How? Patterson called me. He felt guilty. He should feel guilty. He didn't have a choice. Raymond Holt is... He stopped. It doesn't matter what he is. What matters is that this shouldn't have happened, and I'm going to fix it. You can't fix it. I can try. Why? The question came out sharper than she'd intended. Why do you care? Why do you keep showing up? He was quiet for a moment. Because you got into my car by accident on Christmas Eve, and ever since then, I can't stop thinking about you. She didn't know what to say. That's not a line, he said. That's just the truth. I know it sounds. I know how it sounds, but I'm not good at this. I'm not good at talking to people about anything that matters, and you matter. I don't know why, but you do. She sat on her bed, phone pressed to her ear, heart beating in a way that didn't make sense. I lost my job today, she said. I have $312 and rent is due in 2 weeks. I don't have time for whatever this is. Then let me help. No. Mariam, I said no. I'm not your charity case. I'm not your project. I don't want your money or your connections or your coat. I don't want you to be my charity case. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Another pause. I don't know yet. But I'd like to find out. She closed her eyes. She thought about the gas station, the Christmas lights blinking in windows, the sound of his voice saying, I don't leave people stranded on Christmas Eve. There's a coffee shop on Harmon Street, she said finally. I can be there in an hour. I'll be there in 45 minutes. He was already sitting at a corner table when she arrived. The coffee shop was small and warm and smelled like cinnamon and roasted beans. It was the kind of place where the baristas knew your name and the Wi-Fi password was written on a chalkboard. Not the kind of place she'd expected a man like Jonah Vance to frequent. He stood up when she approached. He was wearing jeans and a sweater, which surprised her. She'd only ever seen him in suits. You look different, she said. I wasn't sure what the dress code was for this. What is this? I was hoping you'd help me figure that out. She sat down across from him. He'd already ordered her a coffee, her usual order somehow, which meant he'd either asked the barista or paid attention to what she'd been drinking at the gas station, and she wasn't sure which option was more alarming. How did you know what I drink? I asked Derek. Derek? Your roommate's boyfriend. I tracked him down. That's concerning? I was going to say, thorough. I'm good at research. He said it without arrogance, just fact. I'm also good at finding people who know things. Derek knows things. He was very willing to share once I explained who I was. And who are you exactly? Jonah leaned back in his chair. Is this where I give you my resume? I already know your resume. I Googled you. Jonah Vance, 34, CEO of Vance Development Corp. Net worth somewhere between $2 and $4 billion, depending on which gossip site you believe. No public relationships, no social media. Press coverage describes you as reclusive and intensely private. All accurate. It also says you were engaged once, 7 years ago, to a woman named Caroline Fry. Something shifted in his face. Not pain exactly, more like the ghost of it. That's also accurate. What happened? She decided she didn't want to be married to me. Why not? Because I wasn't what she thought I was. He picked up his coffee, took a sip. She wanted someone who would be present, available, around. And I was building a company which meant I was none of those things. So she left. Do you still love her? No, I'm not sure I ever did. I think I loved the idea of her. The way she fit into my life. The way she looked next to me at events. But that's not the same thing. No, it's not. They looked at each other across the table. Somewhere in the background, someone was playing acoustic guitar, something soft and melancholy. Your turn, Jonah said. My turn for what? Tell me something true about yourself. Something that isn't in your personnel file. You have my personnel file? I have access to a lot of files. That's creepy. Probably, she sighed. What do you want to know? Why you dropped out of school? She didn't answer right away. It wasn't a secret exactly, but it wasn't something she talked about either. My mom got sick. she said finally. Not deadly sick, but bad enough. She needed help. I was the only one who could give it. Where was your father? Gone. He left when I was 12. Haven't heard from him since. I'm sorry. Don't be. He was a lousy father. We're better off without him. She traced her finger around the rim of her coffee cup. Anyway, I dropped out and came home and took care of her for about a year. And then she got better, and I was going to go back. But by then I'd run out of money and my scholarships had lapsed, and she shrugged. Life happened. You could go back now. With what? I just lost my job. I could, if you offer to pay my tuition, I'm walking out. I wasn't going to offer to pay your tuition. Good. I was going to offer you a job. She stared at him. What? I need a personal assistant. My current one is leaving next month. She's moving to Portland with her husband. The job pays well, the hours are reasonable, and it comes with full benefits, including tuition reimbursement. You're offering me a job? Yes, because you feel guilty about Raymond Holt. Partly. What's the other part? The other part is that I've been looking for an assistant for 3 months, and everyone the agency sends is either incompetent or trying to get access to my contacts. You're neither of those things. You don't know that. I spent Christmas Eve in a gas station with you. I know exactly what you are. And what's that? Smart. Stubborn. Honest. The kind of person who'd rather freeze than accept help from someone she doesn't trust. He leaned forward. I'm not asking you to trust me yet. I'm asking you to let me try to earn it. It was too much. The job, the money, the strange intensity of his attention. Part of her wanted to say yes, to take the lifeline he was offering and hold on with both hands. Part of her wanted to run, to get as far away from this man and his complicated life as she could. I need to think about it, she said. Of course. I'm not saying no. I know. I'm saying I need time. How much time? I don't know. A few days, maybe a week. Take whatever time you need. He slid a business card across the table. That's my direct line. Call me when you've decided. She picked up the card. It was thick, cream-colored, with just his name and a phone number embossed in dark gray. No title, no company logo. The card of someone who didn't need to explain who he was. Can I ask you something? She said. Yes. If I say no, if I turn down the job, will I ever see you again? He thought about it. I don't know. Probably not. We don't exactly run in the same circles. And if I say yes, then you'll see me every day. Would that be a problem? For whom? For you. Having me around. Someone who knows, who saw you in a gas station at 3 a.m. talking about your mother. That's not a problem, he said. That's the point. She didn't understand what he meant, but she put the card in her pocket anyway. She said yes. 4 days later, after she'd paid her rent with her severance check and eaten ramen for every meal and stared at the ceiling trying to figure out her life, she called the number on the card and said yes. She started the following Monday. The job was exactly what he'd described. Personal assistant, reasonable hours, good benefits. She answered phones, managed his calendar, coordinated with his driver and his security team and the army of people who kept his life running, smoothly. His office was on the 42nd floor of a building he owned in the Carrington district. It was all glass and steel and views that stretched for miles. Her desk was outside his door, which meant she saw everyone who came and went. There were a lot of people. Business partners, lawyers, architects, politicians. They came in looking confident and left looking thoughtful, like Jonah had rearranged something in their heads. She learned his schedule. Up at 5:30, gym until 7, first meeting at 8. Lunch at his desk if he ate at all. Meetings until 6 or 7, then more work at home. He didn't seem to have hobbies. He didn't seem to have friends. He just worked. Does he ever stop? She asked Michael, his driver, after her first week. Michael was in his 60s, Quiet, with kind eyes and a daughter who was out of the hospital now and doing fine. Not really, Michael said. He's been like this since I started driving for him. 10 years now. Only time I ever saw him slow down was when his mother was alive. She made him take vacations. What happened to his father? Died when Jonah was young. 22, I think. Heart attack. Jonah had to take over the company before he was ready. Been running ever since. She filed that information away with everything else she was learning about Jonah Vance. He was private, but not cold. He remembered the names of everyone who worked for him. He sent flowers when someone's family member was sick. He gave bonuses without being asked. He was also, she was starting to realize, deeply alone. One evening, about a month in, she was working late, finishing up some paperwork that couldn't wait, when she heard a noise from his office. She got up to check. He was standing by the window, looking out at the city lights. He didn't turn when she came in. "You're still here," he said. "So are you." "I'm always here." "I know. That's why I'm still here." He turned then, and she saw something in his face that surprised her. Not sadness, exactly. More like exhaustion, the kind that came from years of carrying too much alone. "Go home, Marin." "Not until you do." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You haven't eaten since breakfast, and you've been standing at that window for 45 minutes. You've been watching me?" "I've been paying attention. There's a difference." He almost smiled. "Is there?" She walked closer. Not too close. She was aware of the lines between them, the employer-employee boundary that couldn't be crossed, but close enough to see his face clearly. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing." Jonah. The use of his name seemed to catch him off guard. She'd been calling him Mr. Vance at work, maintaining the professional distance that seemed expected. "Today is the anniversary," he said finally, "of my mother's death." "Oh, Christmas Eve. The gas station. I don't leave people stranded on Christmas Eve. I can't." "I'm sorry," she said. I should have remembered." "How could you? I only told you once." "Once was enough." He looked at her then, really looked, and she felt something shift between them. Something that had been building for weeks, maybe longer, since that first night in his car. "Do you want company?" she asked. "You should go home." "That's not what I asked." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Yes, I want company." They ordered food, Thai from a place around the corner that stayed open late, and ate it in his office, sitting on the floor like teenagers. He told her about his mother, how she'd raised him after his father died, how she'd encouraged him to take risks, how she'd been the only person who ever told him it was okay to fail. "She sounds amazing," Marin said. "She was. You must miss her." "Every day." He set down his fork. "That's the thing no one tells you about grief. It doesn't get smaller. You just get bigger around it." She thought about her own father, about the hole he'd left when he walked out, and how it had never really filled in, just grown over with scar tissue. "I understand," she said. "I know you do." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the city glittered. All those windows, all those lives, all those people thinking they were alone when really they were surrounded by each other. "Marin," Jonah said. "Yes?" "I'm glad you said yes. To the job? To everything." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just said, "Me too." The first warning sign came 3 weeks later. She was at her desk when a woman walked into the office, tall, blonde, wearing a dress that cost more than Marin's monthly rent used to be. She walked past Marin without acknowledging her existence and headed straight for Jonah's door. "Excuse me," Marin said, standing up. "Do you have an appointment?" The woman turned. Her eyes were ice blue and dismissive. "I don't need an appointment. I'm Caroline." "Caroline Frey." the ex-fiancé. "Mr. Vance is in a meeting," Marin said. "If you'd like to wait, I'll see myself in." She opened the door and walked through. Marin heard voices, Jonah's, sharp with surprise, and then softer, controlled, before the door swung shut. She sat back down, told herself it was none of her business, told herself she didn't care. She cared. 20 minutes later, Caroline emerged. She paused at Marin's desk, looking down at her like she was examining a particularly uninteresting piece of furniture. "So, you're the new assistant," she said. "Yes. He's never hired someone young before. Or pretty. I wasn't hired for my looks." "No, I'm sure you weren't." Caroline smiled, a cold, knowing smile that made Marin's skin prickle. "Be careful, sweetie. Jonah has a way of making people feel special, but in the end he only cares about himself." She walked out. Marin stared at her, retreating back, heart pounding. A moment later, Jonah's door opened. "Marin, can you come in here, please?" She went in. He was standing by his desk, his expression unreadable. "Close the door." She closed it. "I should explain," he said. "You don't owe me an explanation." "No, but I want to give you one." He sat on the edge of his desk. "Caroline and I broke up 7 years ago. She's been persistent since then. Showing up, making contact, trying to reestablish something." "Do you want to reestablish something?" "No." The word was firm, final. "She's not who she used to be. Or maybe she is, and I just didn't see it before. Either way, she's part of my past, not my present." "Does she know that?" "I've told her repeatedly. She doesn't listen." "Why not?" He hesitated. "Because I was valuable when she left, and I'm more valuable now, and Caroline has never been very good at letting go of valuable things." "That's unsettling." "Yes, it is." He looked at her directly. "I wanted you to know what you saw, and I wanted you to know that it's not anything you need to worry about." "I wasn't worried." "Weren't you?" She didn't answer. They both knew she was lying. "Thank you for telling me," she said instead. "Of course." She went back to her desk, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that Caroline's visit was the first crack in something that had been stable until now. A month after that, Raymond Holt reappeared. He came to the office on a Tuesday afternoon, walking in like he owned the building. He probably did own buildings. Men like him always did. "Tell Jonah I'm here," he said to Marin, not looking at her. "Do you have an appointment?" "He'll see me." "I'm afraid Mr. Vance is unavailable. If you'd like to schedule?" "I know you." He turned, finally looking at her, and recognition flickered in his eyes. "The waitress, from Bellamy's." Marin kept her expression neutral. "I'm Mr. Vance's assistant now." "Are you?" He smiled. That same smile from the restaurant, the one that didn't reach his eyes. "Interesting career move. Can I help you with something, Mr. Holt?" "You can tell Jonah I'm here." "As I said, Mr. Vance is unavailable. And as I said," he stepped closer, looming over her desk, "he'll see me." "No." Jonah's voice came from the doorway. He was standing there, watching, his face carefully blank. "I won't." Raymond turned. "Jonah, we need to talk." "No, we don't." "It's about the Whitfield project. I know you're bidding against me. I thought we could come to an arrangement." "I'm not interested in arrangements with you. You're making a mistake." "I don't think I am." They stared at each other. The tension in the room was palpable. Two powerful men, neither willing to back down. "I see," Raymond said finally. "This is how it's going to be. This is how it is. You'll regret this. Possibly, but not as much as you'll regret whatever you're thinking of doing." Raymond smiled again. It was the kind of smile that promised nothing good. "We'll see," he said. He looked at Marin one more time, a look that made her feel exposed, catalogued, and then walked out. When he was gone, Jonah let out a breath. "Are you okay?" Marin asked. "I should be asking you that." "I'm fine." "He's dangerous. I know. I mean it. He's not like other people. He doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive. And he goes after the things that matter most to his enemies." "Why are you telling me this?" Jonah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because you matter to me, and I want you to be careful." She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. The situation escalated. Over the next few weeks, things started going wrong. Small things at first. Messages that went undelivered, meetings that got canceled, files that disappeared from the server. Then bigger things. A key investor pulled out of a deal with no explanation. A building permit that should have been approved was suddenly under review. A reporter started calling, asking questions about Jonah's past that had no bearing on anything current. "It's Raymond," Marin said one evening, reviewing the damage. "It has to be." "I know. Can't you do something? Report him? Sue him?" "There's nothing to report. Nothing that can be proven. He's too smart for that." Jonah rubbed his temples. "He's trying to hurt me without leaving fingerprints." "Why? Because you won't make a deal with him?" "Because I made him look weak. At that dinner when I told him to stop harassing you, and then I hired you, which made him look even weaker. He can't stand that. So this is my fault." "No." He looked at her sharply. "This is his fault. All of it. You're just the excuse he's using. I can leave. Find another job. Maybe that would—" "Absolutely not. Jonah, I'm not going to let him bully me into firing you. That's exactly what he wants. But if it would make things easier, Marin." He crossed to where she was sitting, crouched down so they were at eye level. "You're not going anywhere. I don't abandon the people I care about, and I'm not going to start now." She felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back. "Okay," she said. "Then what do we do?" "We fight back." Fighting back meant working harder. It meant long nights and early mornings, rebuilding connections that Raymond had damaged, finding new investors to replace the ones he'd scared off. It meant Marin learning parts of the business she'd never expected to learn, stepping into gaps when there was no one else to fill them. It also meant spending more time with Jonah. More dinners in his office, more late-night conversations, more moments where the professional distance between them seemed to shrink. She tried not to think about it. She tried to focus on the work, on the crisis, on anything other than the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. But she noticed. She always noticed. One night, about 2 months after Raymond's visit, they were working late again. It was after midnight. They'd finally closed a deal that would keep the company stable for the next quarter, and Jonah had opened a bottle of wine to celebrate. "We did it," he said, pouring 2 glasses. "You did it. I just answered phones and organized spreadsheets." "You did a lot more than that." He handed her a glass. "I couldn't have done this without you." "That's not true." "It is true. You kept me sane. You kept me focused. You made me believe we could actually win." She took a sip of wine to hide the flush creeping up her cheeks. "Can I ask you something?" Jonah said. "You always can. Why did you really take this job?" She considered lying. Considered giving him the practical answer, the money, the benefits, the tuition reimbursement, but she was tired of lying to herself, and even more tired of lying to him. "Because I wanted to see you again," she said, "and this was the only way I knew how." The words hung in the air between them. Jonah set down his glass. "Marin—" "I know," she said quickly. "I know it's complicated. I know you're my boss and I'm your employee, and there are rules and lines and—" "Marin." "And I shouldn't have said anything. I'm sorry, I just—" "Marin." She stopped talking. He was looking at her with an expression she'd never seen before. Open. Vulnerable. Like all his walls had come down at once. "I've wanted to kiss you since the gas station," he said. since you sat across from me in that plastic chair and told me you'd rather freeze than accept help from someone you didn't trust. Then why haven't you? Because I didn't want to be like every other man who's taken advantage of his position. Because I wanted you to choose me, not feel obligated to me. Because, he let out a breath. Because I was afraid. Of what? Of losing you. Of having something real and watching it fall apart like everything else. She stood up, walked around the table until she was standing in front of him. Close enough to touch. You won't lose me, she said. He reached up and cupped her face in his hands. His touch was gentle, tentative, like he was afraid she might disappear. Tell me to stop, he said. No. He kissed her. It was soft at first, careful. Then deeper, more urgent, like they'd both been waiting for this moment for longer than they wanted to admit. Her hands found his shoulders, his hair, the back of his neck. His arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Well, she said, that happened. Yes. What now? Now we figure out what this is, what we want it to be. And Raymond? And Caroline? And everyone else who's going to have an opinion about this? They can all go to hell. He said it simply, matter-of-factly. I spent 7 years doing what other people expected. Being with who they thought I should be with. Making decisions based on appearances and business advantages and things that didn't matter. I'm done with that. So you're choosing me. Huh, I'm choosing you. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. If you'll have me. She pretended to think about it. You're a lot of work. I know. And you don't sleep enough. Also true. And you're being targeted by a vindictive billionaire who wants to destroy everything you've built. That's unfortunately accurate. And I'm a college dropout who spent Christmas Eve in a gas station because I couldn't afford a cab. That's not who you are. That's just where you were. She smiled. It felt strange. She hadn't smiled in weeks, not really, but also right. Then yes, she said. I'll have you. Keeping their relationship secret was harder than either of them expected. Not because anyone noticed, people were too focused on their own lives to pay attention to subtle shifts in body language, but because hiding felt wrong, like they were ashamed of something that should be celebrated. I don't want to sneak around, Marin said one morning, 2 weeks into whatever they were calling this. They were in his apartment, a penthouse in the Whitmore building with views she still couldn't quite believe were real. I hate it. I know. So why are we doing it? Because the moment this becomes public, Raymond will use it against us. He'll say I'm sleeping with my assistant, that I used my power to manipulate you. He'll make it ugly. It's not ugly. I know that. You know that. But the public won't care about the truth. They'll care about the story. He was right. She knew he was right. But it still felt like they were letting Raymond win, letting him control their lives even in this. How long, she asked, until we've neutralized him? Until he can't hurt us anymore. How do we do that? I'm working on it. Working on it meant digging into Raymond's past. Jonah hired investigators, the discreet, expensive kind, to look into Raymond's business dealings. What they found was troubling but not surprising. A pattern of harassment, of intimidation, of deals that benefited Raymond at everyone else's expense. Not enough to prosecute, but enough to leverage. He's been doing this for decades, Marin said, reading through the reports. How has no one stopped him? Because he's careful, and because he's rich, and because the people he hurts are usually too scared or too poor to fight back. But we're not. No, we're not. The plan came together slowly. Jonah reached out to other businessmen Raymond had wronged. There were more than she'd expected, and started building a coalition. Not to destroy him necessarily, just to make it clear that there would be consequences if he kept attacking. It was delicate work. Dangerous. Raymond had eyes everywhere, and one wrong move could bring everything crashing down. And then, 2 weeks before they were ready to move, Caroline resurfaced. She showed up at the penthouse on a Sunday afternoon. Maren was there. She spent most weekends there now, and she was the one who answered the door. "Oh," Caroline said, taking in Maren's presence, her casual clothes, the way she clearly belonged in this space. "I see. I wondered why Jonah had been so distant lately. Now I know." "What do you want, Caroline?" "To talk to Jonah. Alone." "He's not here." "Then I'll wait." She pushed past Maren and into the apartment like she owned it. Maybe she thought she did. Maybe, in some corner of her mind, she still believed she had a claim on this place, on this life, on the man who lived here. Maren didn't follow her. Instead, she pulled out her phone and texted Jonah. "Caroline's here. She knows about us." The reply came 30 seconds later. "I'm on my way. Don't let her leave." Maren went into the living room. Caroline was standing by the window, looking out at the view with an expression of ownership. "Nice apartment," she said. "I helped him pick it out, you know. Years ago." "I'm sure you did. I don't expect you to understand what we had. It was complicated. But it was real." "Was it?" Caroline turned. "You think you know him? You don't. You know the version of him he shows people. The controlled, careful version. But underneath that, he's cold, empty, incapable of real connection." "That's not true." "It is true. I spent 3 years trying to reach him, trying to break through. I never could." She smiled, but it was more like a grimace. "You'll find out eventually, when he gets bored of you and moves on to the next pretty young thing who makes him feel alive for 5 minutes. Maren felt anger rise in her chest. Hot, sharp, controlled. "Is that what happened to you?" she asked. "He got bored?" "What?" "You said he was cold, incapable of connection, but you're the one who left him. So either you're lying about why or you're lying about who he is." Caroline's face went hard. "You don't know what you're talking about. I know you show up at his office uninvited. I know you keep trying to reinsert yourself into his life. I know you're standing in his apartment right now, trying to warn me away from him. That's not how someone acts when they're over a relationship. That's how someone acts when they're obsessed. I'm not. You are, and I think you know it. I think you've known it for 7 years, and you can't accept that he moved on when you didn't." Caroline took a step toward her. Her eyes were blazing. "You think you're special? You're not. You're a convenience, a distraction. The moment things get hard, really hard, he'll drop you just like he dropped me." "He didn't drop you. You left." "Because he didn't give me a choice," the words echoed in the apartment. Caroline was breathing hard, her composure finally cracked. "He was never there," she said, her voice raw. "Never present. Never. He couldn't give me what I needed. So yes, I left. But I shouldn't have had to." "No," Maren said. "You're right. You shouldn't have had to. But you did. And you made your choice. And now you don't get to punish him or me because you regret it." The door opened. Jonah walked in. His eyes went from Caroline to Maren and back again. Something passed between him and Caroline. Years of history compressed into a single look. "Caroline," he said, "it's time for you to leave. We need to talk." "No, we don't. There's nothing left to say." You had your chance. You made your choice. I've moved on." He looked at Maren. Really looked at her, openly, without trying to hide anything. "I love her, and I'm not going to let you or Raymond or anyone else interfere with that." The words landed like a bomb. I love her. He'd never said that before. Not to Maren, not in those words. She felt something bloom in her chest. Warm, overwhelming, right. Caroline stared at them both. For a moment, Maren thought she might cry, or scream, or both. Instead, she just laughed. A harsh, brittle sound. "Fine," she said. "Have your little romance, but don't say I didn't warn you." She picked up her purse and walked to the door. "When it falls apart, and it will fall apart, don't come crying to me." She left. The door clicked shut behind her. Jonah let out a long breath. "Well," he said, "that could have gone worse." Maren was still processing, still trying to catch up to what he'd said. "You love me." He turned to her. "Yes. You've never said that before." "I know. I was waiting for the right moment." He smiled a little ruefully. "Apparently, the right moment is during a confrontation with my ex-fiancé." "Very romantic." "I try." She crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him. He held her tight, his chin resting on top of her head. "I love you too," she said into his chest. In case that wasn't clear. It wasn't, actually, but I was hoping. She laughed. It came out wet. She was crying, she realized. Happy tears, confused tears, the tears of someone who never expected this and got it anyway. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we stop hiding. Now we deal with Raymond. Now we—" He pulled back to look at her. "Now we build something. Together." "Together," she repeated. "I like the sound of that." Going public was terrifying. Not the announcement itself. Jonah released a simple statement confirming their relationship, nothing dramatic, but the aftermath, the attention, the scrutiny, the sudden feeling that everyone in the world was watching and judging and waiting for them to fail. The press was mostly kind, or at least neutral. A few outlets speculated about the boss-employee dynamic, but most seemed genuinely interested in the story. The random meeting on Christmas Eve, the gas station, the unlikely romance. Raymond, however, was not kind. Within a week of the announcement, stories started appearing, anonymous sources claiming Maren had seduced Jonah for his money, old acquaintances from Bellamy's who'd been paid to say she was difficult, unstable, opportunistic, a detailed breakdown of her financial history, making her look like a gold digger who'd targeted a vulnerable billionaire. "None of this is true," Maren said, staring at her phone. They're making things up." "I know. Can we sue them?" "We could, but it would take years. And in the meantime, the stories keep spreading." Jonah sat down beside her on the couch. "This is what he does. This is how he fights. He can't beat me directly, so he's trying to destroy the thing I care about most." "Me." "Yes." She felt sick. She'd known dating Jonah would be complicated. She hadn't realized it would make her a target. "Maybe I should—" "No." His voice was sharp. "Whatever you're about to suggest, no. You don't even know what I was going to say. You were going to suggest stepping back, giving him what he wants, letting him win to protect me." She didn't deny it. "That's not happening," Jonah said. "I meant what I said. I love you, and I'm not going to let him scare us apart. But, no buts, we fight this together, or we don't fight it at all." Together. The word kept coming back to that. "Okay," she said. "Together." The coalition moved faster after that. The other businessmen Raymond had wronged were more willing to come forward now, partly because Jonah had shown he wouldn't back down, partly because the stories about Maren had made them angry on her behalf. "He did the same thing to me," said one, a woman named Hannah Kowalski who ran a real estate firm. "When I refused to sell him my father's property, he smeared my name, tried to make me unemployable." "He's been doing this for years," said another, a man named Victor Chen who owned a chain of hotels. "We've all been waiting for someone to stand up to him." "Then let's do it," Maren said. They all looked at her. She wasn't supposed to be in this meeting. She was the assistant, the girlfriend, the collateral damage. But she'd asked to be there, and Jonah had agreed. "Let's pool everything we have," she continued. "Every piece of evidence, every story, every victim. Make it impossible for anyone to ignore." "That's risky," Victor said. "If he finds out what we're doing before we're ready, he'll find out eventually anyway. He always does." She looked around the room. "The question is whether we act first or wait for him to act. And I think we've all been waiting long enough." Silence. Then Hannah nodded. "She's right." "She usually is," Jonah said. There was pride in his voice. The plan came together quickly after that. They compiled evidence, coordinated statements, reached out to journalists who had been investigating Raymond for years, but never had enough sources to move forward. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. The headline was simple: Raymond Holt, a pattern of abuse, intimidation, and fraud. The article was not simple, it was exhaustive. 30 pages of evidence, interviews, documents, dates, names, every dirty deal, every silenced victim, every dollar stolen, every life ruined, every law bent or broken. By noon, it was trending. By evening, regulators were announcing investigations. By the next morning, Raymond Holt's empire was beginning to crumble. He tried to fight back, of course, released statements denying everything, threatened lawsuits called the Coalition Liars and the Journalists Hacks. But it was too late. The dam had broken. People who had been silent for years were finally speaking. Evidence that had been hidden was finally coming to light. A week later, Raymond was arrested. 3 weeks after that, he was indicted on multiple counts of fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. Jonah watched the news coverage from his office, Maren beside him. "It's over," she said. "Not quite. There'll be a trial. Appeals. It could take years. But he can't hurt us anymore." "No." He turned off the television. "He can't." They stood there for a moment, the city spread out below them, the future suddenly wide open. "What now?" Maren asked. "Now?" He turned to her. "Now we live." Life, it turned out, looked different than she'd expected. Jonah stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his company. Not completely. He was still the CEO, still made the big decisions, but he delegated more, worked shorter hours, actually took weekends off. "I've spent my whole life building," he told Maren one evening as they walked along the waterfront near his apartment. "I never stopped to enjoy what I'd built. And now? Now I want to enjoy it. With you." She enrolled in school again, night classes at first, then full-time when she quit her job. Jonah insisted she didn't need to work, but she wanted to. She wanted to finish what she'd started, to prove to herself that she could. "You don't have anything to prove," he said. "I know, but I want to anyway." He understood. He was the same way. The months passed. She finished her first semester with a 3.8 GPA. He closed a deal that had been in negotiation for years. They bought a house together, not a penthouse, an actual house, with a yard and a garden and room for the future. Caroline never came back. Maren heard she'd moved abroad, Paris or London or somewhere equally glamorous, and reinvented herself. Good for her, Maren thought. Everyone deserved a second chance. Raymond's trial began in the spring. It was brutal. Weeks of testimony, cross-examination, legal maneuvering. But in the end, the evidence was overwhelming. He was convicted on 14 counts and sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Maren watched the verdict on television. She didn't feel triumphant exactly, just tired. Like a weight she'd been carrying for months had finally been lifted. "It's really over now?" she said to Jonah. "Yes, it is." They got married in June. It was a small ceremony. Family, close friends, the people who had stood by them through everything. The venue was the garden of their new house, decorated with string lights and wildflowers. Maren wore a simple white dress. Jonah wore a dark suit. They wrote their own vows, "The night we met," Jonah said, holding her hands, "you got into my car by mistake. You were cold, tired, and looking for someone who wasn't there. And I thought, this is what fate feels like. This is the universe saying, pay attention." He paused. Marin saw tears in his eyes. Jonah Vance, who never cried, who kept everything locked down tight. "I didn't believe in fate before that night. I didn't believe in much of anything. But you changed that. You showed me that it's possible to trust someone completely. To love someone without holding back." He squeezed her hands. "I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that trust." Marin's turn. She'd written her vows a dozen times, crossed out every version, started again. "When I got into your car," she said, "I thought I'd made the worst mistake of my life. I thought I was in danger. I thought—" She laughed a little wetly. "I thought I was about to be kidnapped by a serial killer." A ripple of laughter from the guests. "Instead," she continued, "I found someone who drove me to a gas station, bought me coffee, and spent Christmas Eve sitting in a plastic chair because he didn't want me to be alone." She looked at him. Really looked the way she had that first night. "That's who you are. Not the billionaire, not the businessman. Just a man who doesn't leave people behind?" She blinked back tears. "I promise to never leave you behind either. I promise to be there always, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." They exchanged rings. They kissed. The guests cheered. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Marin thought about that night. The cold, the dead phone, the wrong car. The tiny series of accidents that had led her here. Sometimes the worst mistakes turn out to be the best decisions. 5 years later, the gas station on Harmon Street was still there. It hadn't changed much. Same fluorescent lights, same tired-looking shelves, same faded sign advertising cigarettes and lottery tickets. Rudy had retired years ago, but his nephew ran the place now. Marin parked in the lot and got out of the car. Behind her, she heard another door open. "Why are we stopping here?" asked Lily, unbuckling her seatbelt. "I want to show you something." She took her daughter's hand, 3 years old, dark hair like her father's, stubborn chin like her own, and walked inside. It was late, almost midnight. Christmas Eve. The nephew, his name tag said Marcus, looked up from behind the counter. "Can I help you?" "Just looking," Marin said. She walked to the corner where she'd sat that night, 5 years ago. The chairs were different now, plastic upgraded to metal, but the spot was the same. "What are we looking at, Mama?" "This is where I met your daddy." Lily looked around with the skeptical expression of a child who had expected something more impressive. "Here?" "Right here. I was sitting in that corner and he came in and bought me coffee." "That's not very exciting." Marin laughed. "No, I suppose not. But it was the most important night of my life." The door opened behind them. Jonah walked in, carrying their second child, 8 months old, sleeping against his shoulder. "Find what you were looking for?" he asked. "Just memories." He looked around the gas station, seeing what she saw. The ghost of 2 strangers sitting across from each other, neither of them knowing what was about to begin. "Good memories," he said. "The best." They stood there for a moment, their family filling the space where their story had started. "Come on," Marin said finally, picking up Lily. "Let's go home." They walked out into the cold December night. Snow was just starting to fall. Soft, quiet, covering the world in white. "Mama," Lily said. "Yes, baby." "Can we come back next year?" Marin smiled. "Every year, for as long as you want." They got into the car, the same car, actually, that Jonah had been driving that night. He'd kept it. Said it was good luck. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Marin looked back at the gas station one more time. She thought about all the people sitting there right now, waiting for buses that would come in a few hours, thinking this was the worst night of their lives. Maybe it was, or maybe it was the beginning of something they couldn't imagine yet. You never knew which moments were the turning points until you looked back at them later. She took Jonah's hand. He squeezed it once without looking away from the road. "Love you," he said quietly. "Love you too." The car turned onto the main road, heading home. Christmas lights blinked in the windows of houses they passed. Somewhere, church bells were ringing, and in the back seat their daughters slept, peaceful and safe, as the snow fell softly around them. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Mr. Douglas Tales, where powerful stories unfold one moment at a time.